It's Alissa. I'm back checking in with an update for heading into week 5 of the relaunch campaign, and definitely there's some big paradigm shifts going down, and it's wild and woolly but cool. Definitely restructuring how I'm looking at the world, and in a really good way. But so number one, I'm having like a profound full circle moment, you could say. One thing that I think maybe a lot of people might not be aware of is that I actually started my career as a scientist. I was like a biomedical engineer, and that's where I started. And I didn't have, we'll just say that was it was kind of a painful experience, so I don't really ever talk about it. It's kind of one of those forgotten periods of my life. But actually that experience has had a profound impact on the cheese and how it came to be. And so there's this very like healing moment that's happening of integration with all of this. And so that's really bubbling up this week. And just to give you some context with the cheese, and I've alluded to this, there's a wellness benefit that's built into the cheese, and I don't think there was a lot of awareness about that in the Punk Rock Labs incarnation of the cheese. And I think, you know, in this moment of enlightenment, I could say that maybe part of that reason is because of this experience that I had, and just sort of disowning that period of my life of being a scientist because I had a bad experience. So it's like I'm reclaiming that now, because we're gonna go forward with the cheese in its full glory. And so you know, how this relates to the cheese is there's a number of different ways to approach the problem of making a plant-based cheese. So for example, traditionally people have used like a culinary approach to make the cheese. And so basically what that is sort of like mimicking the flavor of cheese by using things to kind of create the flavor of cheese. And so you know, there's kind of a tradition of this that's out there, and it's kind of evolved into using like starches and stabilizers and different kinds of flavors to sort of get that like umami flavor. So, you know, that's a totally viable approach, and we've been doing it for a while. Another approach that I think has come up, and I think there's like a lot of confusion about as far as nomenclature, is what people call a cultured approach for making cheese. And so I think you know, typically, I mean, how this works is we'll add culture to the cheese, but oftentimes even though culture is being added to the cheese, the flavor is coming from somewhere else. So for example, we might use an already fermented ingredient such as miso to get the flavor of cheese. But generally, if you're adding culture to the ingredient, that doesn't actually necessarily mean that the cheese is fermented. It could be, but it also might not be, you know. So if you're still getting the flavor of the cheese from like lemon juice or miso or vinegar or some other ingredient like this, then I would say that would fall into the category of cultured, because there is culture there, but it's not necessarily fermented. So it's not necessarily going to impart the wellness benefit of the fermentation. And so for me, having gone through all these challenges with my health, like that, the fermentation and the wellness benefit that imparts, that's the area that I'm super passionate about. And also because my background as a scientist, I'm a microbiologist. That's the secret sauce, you know, with my cheese. So basically, when you ferment the cheese, it's like you add culture to it and you ferment it. So the flavor of the cheese actually comes from the byproducts of a fermentation process, but not from adding some sort of flavoring ingredient, such as lemon juice, vinegar, miso, or something like that. So, you know, with our cheese, the base was culture, water, salt, and cashews. I mean, just 4 ingredients, but the flavor came from the fermentation. So that, the fermentation part is like, there's actually a science to it. It's microbiology. It's a microbiological approach. And so that is kind of where we're marrying these two worlds of science and food. And this is why this is like a full circle moment for me, because actually the way that we made the cheese was a unique technology. And for this reason, when we go to like solve the issue of scaling the cheese, it becomes necessary for me to, this week I formed a biotech company, and the purpose of this company is to hold the intellectual property for the process so that it can be licensed out to other companies, so that it can be produced on a larger scale. So this is profoundly healing and full circle for me to be coming back to science and integrating these lost parts of myself. So anyways, this week I started a biotech company. It's called Ecobiotic Technology. I'm super excited about it. It's it just kind of combines all of my passions, and this is going to be the home of the technology behind the cheese, Ecobiotic Technology. So the webpage, I'll link it down below, but it's ecobiotictech.com. So you can check it out if you like. And yeah, it's a pretty big development for this week. So the second development that I wanted to mention in this video is just I'm still working on the limited edition artisan cheese, and I plan to keep doing that. And I have started making the cheese again. But one question that came up by one of you, it was Cindy, who wrote me, because I've showed the new packaging. I think it looks super cute, and it has the logo, and she was like, why isn't there any branding on here? There's no name, and I was just like, that's because there isn't a name yet. Like I haven't thought of one. So I've been going by R&D Creamery, which is like a placeholder name, but it's not the name that I intend to use for the cheese. So I just want to put it out there that if anyone has any suggestions for the artisan line of cheeses, I want something that's kind of elegant and sort of artisan and fancy, but not in a snobby kind of way, just to kind of reflect this line of cheeses. I think it's not really intended for the masses. It's really going to be intended for people with discriminating tastes, and it's not going to be widely available. It's going to be kind of cutting edge, and the first year, because of everything that's going on, it might be limited just to the people who are supporting this campaign. In any event, it's not going to be like a huge mass production, and that's really not going to be the point of it. So I'm just going to put that out there, because I've been enjoying reading all the emails and feedback I've gotten from people, and maybe this is a collaboration we can do together. So let me know your thoughts, and I will be back next week with another update.